This is an ABC News American Agenda special.
It takes time to think.
If you believe in the kids, they respond.
Every child has something that's best in that child.
A revolution has begun in learning.
I think everybody can learn.
It is happening in laboratories, in schools,
It's kids getting involved, it's kids cooperating, kids sharing.
in homes, where you work.
We need to break this wall.
It promises to reach every American,
I was called a dummy because
and it could remake America itself.
I'm just growing from what I've learned.
We have found there is hardly a problem in American learning for which there isn't an inspiring solution somewhere.
Whoa, did you see that?
I think every child has a gift, and I know that.
We have begun to see how all these breakthroughs might fit together to build the best learning and education system in the world.
It's not very complicated, very simple.
Make education in America a matter of common miracles.
Common Miracles, the new American revolution in learning, with Peter Jennings and education correspondent Bill Blakemore.
Welcome. We're going to go on a journey of self-discovery in this hour. We're going to find out something about how America works when it works well. And thanks to Bill, we're going to discover that it's not only possible, but not all that difficult, to liberate the human potential in all Americans. You can see we're all represented here. We're going to discover what Bill Blakemore and our American Agenda team have discovered in the last 4 years, that learning can be a fascinating, liberating game for all Americans, no matter what age, what sex, what color, or what background. We're going to prove, aren't we, Bill, that education ideas and methods which are the keys to a glorious future are out there now if you look for them. And there is, I'm right, no longer any excuse to ignore them.
Peter, during 4 years traveling all over this country, we have seen innovative solutions in great variety. And we've discovered that myths about how Americans do their learning and about learning itself are falling fast. There are some astonishing discoveries, even about the central player in all this, the mind itself.
The human mind turns out to be far more flexible and capable in all of us than we ever thought. Scientists even believe now that whenever you learn something, you literally grow brain. You grow more links between your brain cells, little connecting strands they call dendrites. The more you are challenged, the more dendrites you grow. And unless there is a specific disease preventing it, this brain growth happens throughout life, even into old age. This has enormous implications for education of all kinds. Whenever you concentrate your thoughts, your brain begins to reorganize itself, build new connections. It actually helps to change itself, rewire itself, and this creates new powers for it.
Sled, shed, and sped.
Right.
The fact that we grow brain helps explain why anyone can learn. Adults learning to read.
Reel, grill.
Grill.
Like cooking with.
Yeah.
Or learning anything new.
Not necessarily that you'll be doing programming. So the equation for the differential is the...
Anyone who's in school, of any kind.
The same way it was with the white blood cell count, okay?
Yellow dot.
Even kids born with brain damage or learning disorders.
I see a purple cat looking at me.
Like this young lady who was completely withdrawn until her brain was challenged by some knowing teachers.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
A movie star.
Movie star.
And an artist. Because I'm an artist already. Because I know I am.
Her imagination is beginning literally to change her mind. Scientists are beginning to radically change their minds about what our minds can do and about the very nature of intelligence itself. The old idea that intelligence is a single quantity that you can measure with a single number, like an IQ score, putting everyone somewhere on the same line from smart to dumb, is giving way. Instead, say researchers, everyone has many different intelligences, but no two people have them in the same combination. The psychologist Howard Gardner has discovered that everyone has at least 7 different intelligences. Interpersonal intelligence, the ability to understand other people's moods and concerns. Introspective intelligence, the ability to understand yourself, your own feelings. Spatial intelligence, the knack of visualizing shapes or location with movement and dimensions. Bodily intelligence, when the muscles have their own memory and meanings. Musical intelligence, thinking in sounds in their infinite variety. Verbal intelligence, the ability to use words, spoken, written, or just heard. Mathematical or logical intelligence, numbers, symbols, abstract relations.
You will have 24 minutes to do this test.
These last two, verbal and mathematical or logical intelligence, are often the only ones valued by traditional schools. It's a great waste for those schools and many employers who often fail to recognize and nurture the great variety of intelligences in those they supervise. The question they should be asking, says Gardner, is not how smart are you, but how are you smart?
Here's the first test item. Begin.
19 separate intelligences or aptitudes are measured at the Johnson O'Connor Institute based in Manhattan. Discovering what you're good at, they say, is critical to success.
Done.
Yes, that's correct. The aptitudes determine the directions that you'll get satisfaction from. The more you use of your natural talents, the happier we think you'll be.
They believe that if you have a strong aptitude for something, you have to use it. If you are in a job or a class which does not call on your strengths, it will make you unhappy, restless. It's the reason some adults never advance in their work, and the reason some kids may become discipline problems or dropouts. They become bored or frustrated when what they can be good at is not recognized. At this public elementary school in Indianapolis, called the Key School, they recognize and nurture each student's unique intelligences. Its students are just regular kids chosen at random. Yet after it was founded, it quickly got the reputation of being only for the gifted. Actually, it is. The philosophy here is that every child is gifted, and they prove it. Here, the 7 intelligences identified by Howard Gardner are each given equal time and importance. Every child is given the chance to develop his or her unique combination of talents, which may emphasize spatial intelligence, or verbal, or musical.
When I take music class, usually the rest of the day I'm really happy, and it just makes me feel better.
So he does better in his other classes, once his special strengths have been given the exercise they're so eager for. For those who love art,
they get confidence in art. They feel like they're good in art. They get recognition for that, and it's respected, and then they have more confidence in other areas.
that confidence helps their performance, and their test scores go up. These kids experience being good in some areas while learning to appreciate classmates' strengths in other areas. Experienced teachers in the past have often felt every child is gifted. At this school, it's policy. Nurture each student's unique combination of talents rather than look for a single IQ number.
In fact, psychologists say that old fixed IQ model for imagining what our minds are like has often done great damage. It has crippled many kids and adults with the notion that they are somehow stuck with inadequate minds, so they don't even try to succeed, which means they never experience the excitement of learning something new and the discovery that you play a part in controlling where your thoughts and learning will go. One psychologist, Robert Sternberg, says such control, the ability to organize your thoughts and coordinate them with your actions, is what intelligence really is. And this can be taught to most anyone, as some teachers are now doing.
What did you learn about shapes?
What were some of the problems? Think for a minute before the hands go up.
Let him think. Let him think for a minute. Shh, he's thinking.
The fancy word for this is metacognition. It means thinking about your thinking, starting to direct it, work with it.
It takes time to think.
Yes, it does. And in schools we've visited where teachers are getting kids to realize they can invent new ways of thinking for themselves, the kids turn out to be naturals at metacognition, and their test scores go up. Children's games, after all, are all about imagination. They're always making up new games with new rules. In effect, inventing new ways of thinking.
What happens if the marble comes out here?
The Key School even uses a games room to help kids become aware of the enjoyable concentration they have when they're playing a game they like.
We get the flow of trying to do the strategy of that game for 40 minutes.
It sounds like fun.
It is.
The teachers then tell them to go for the same kind of fun, of happy concentration in the game of learning, in their classes. It works. Kids who in other schools would be just average become eager learners, truly bright, full of questions.
Qué bonita.
The brain scientists might say they are growing dendrites.
Felipe.
Papa, come here.
Sí.
This kind of concentration puts anyone into a state which the psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls flow. That's when you're challenged by something not so easy that it bores you, and not so impossible as to produce anxiety. It's the engaged mental state of anyone who's on the way to learning or creating something new, and it's one of the most pleasurable states a person can know. The great teachers can lead virtually anyone into a state of flow, where you begin to improve your intelligence, your mind, your brain.
You have an idea?
A student in one of those metacognition classes, Angela Avant, summed it up for us as well as anybody could.
Like if you mess up, you're saying, oh, I'm in trouble, deep trouble. Then you look up and try to see what you can do. Then finally, if you think for a while, you can find out how to do it and stuff.
Everyone can learn. We have seen far too many examples in our travels for the American agenda to think otherwise. But a school must have high expectations for every student, regardless of their backgrounds or circumstances. For example, at the Daniel Webster Public Elementary School in San Francisco, many of the kids come from poor, unsettled immigrant or minority families. In some homes, kids had barely been shown what books are for. So as you'd expect, the school's test scores were among the worst. In math, for example, they were 65th out of 69 schools. Then, in only 3 years, the scores jumped to 23rd and still climbing. Why? Because this became what's called an accelerated school. Again, something built on higher expectations from adults.
And Marita, you're going to write about her physical characteristics, how she looks. Together. You two ladies are going to do her personality, how she acts.
Frankly, there's nothing wrong with these children. They simply have a different set of experiences than the experiences that schools expect for success.
Brainstorm together.
Is a personality a color? Yes.
So our job then is to change the school so that these kids can succeed by our accelerating their learning and treating them in a very positive way, not negative way. We don't have to repair them. What we have to do is build on what they come with.
They come with big brains, at least.
Who has the feather that belongs to this bird?
So the staff looked all over the country for the best teaching programs, including many created for so-called gifted children. They found those programs can help any child. And the kids who had been victims of poverty and depressing education came alive.
If we expose all children to a rich science and math and music and other types of programs that normally only middle-class and upper-middle-class kids get, then all children will find themselves going into the mainstream of education.
Why haven't all children been entering the mainstream of education? Whatever the problem, it's not with their intelligence. As places like the Webster and Key schools show us, when educators treat each child like a surprise,
All right, now I love what you wrote. Now
instead of trying to label them or strictly dictate what they'll know and be able to do, virtually all kids can become enthusiastic learners. But many are never given this opportunity.
What she was doing when
Listen, remember I said it's a
The problem in most American schools, and with adults in general, is a built-in attitude of low expectations. It reveals itself in the practice called tracking or ability grouping. That's when you group all the slow kids together.
75 plus 20.
$95.
95 plus 5?
$1.
$1. Okay, $1.
And also put all the fast kids together.
Harry, would you check 80 times 36, please? Julia, will you check 300 times 36?
The theory is that it keeps fast kids from being held back by slow kids, and slow kids from becoming disheartened by trying to keep up. It's been common in America. It doesn't work, and it's done great harm.
That's how much?
Tracking ignores the new knowledge about intelligence, which throws open the very question of what slow, average, and smart mean. And research shows ability grouping does not improve the performance of fast kids. And it all but guarantees that kids labeled as slower will never catch fire.
Down with tracking, up with equal education. Down with tracking, up with equal education.
It can also perpetuate segregation. At this school in Selma, Alabama, we found all the faces in this lower track class were black, and most in this upper track class were white.
So right about here is where it reaches 0.
Some of the most exciting school districts we've found are rejecting tracking and trying to reach all their students.
Well, which angle would have gotten his arrow to go the furthest?
45.
They are beginning to create individual education plans for each student.
This presentation of his exhibition and then personally questioning him gave me a better view of what he knows and what he didn't know, rather than just a test.
At 1 second,
In effect, they are creating as many ability groups as there are students. That way, the unique combination of intelligences in each person has a good chance to discover the powerful, engaging adventure of learning, which researchers now tell us can be virtually everyone's.
Well, if it can, then the requirement for America is to offer that adventure to all students, whatever their age or circumstances. When we come back, we'll show you teachers and schools that make that kind of learning a common miracle. Now that we've seen how much potential there is in everyone and that everyone has the capacity to learn, let's add something else. Let's add a teacher, even a school, which starts out with the presumption that everyone can learn. If only someone or some system believes in their capacity and knows how to bring it alive.
Good morning. Pretty blouse. Thank you.
Traditionally, when you fall behind grade level, you're pulled out from your reading or math class, often a moment of shame, taken down the hall to another room, and given lots of repetition, boring drills with one-word answers.
Nick, fast as a ox. Okay.
The studies show it doesn't work.
Sings.
Look again.
Science.
Okay, super.
Trying to make kids feel good about themselves by making answers easier to give them at least the feeling of success doesn't fool the kids. And it seems to show them that learning is supposed to be boring.
Oh, look at how fast he's going.
But we've seen a new sort of remedial class which fills children with confidence and returns them in many cases even ahead of their classmates in reading and math. This one is called HOTS, for higher order thinking skills. It uses computer games to help them discover their own thinking strategies. First, the teacher gives them what is called incomplete teaching.
You set the stage. You get them excited. You give them just enough information so that they have to get more information from the context on the computer.
The students are intentionally led into frustration. They want to play the computer game, but when they ask the teacher for help,
Tell them everything you need to know is on the screen. Everything you need to know is there, and walk away is hard to do. It's hard to see a child going crazy, and yet it's worked every time. Then as soon as I would say that, they say, oh, there it is.
But you want to know the best way to enhance the self-concept of a child? Is to have them fail initially at something that is very difficult but interesting to them, and then have them ultimately succeed. And we call that controlled floundering.
during their controlled floundering at the computer, the teacher doesn't instruct, but inquires, nudges them to take a risk on their own thinking.
Are you choosing March for a special reason? I'm never telling them what they should do, but I'm asking them why they chose to do what they did.
Because maybe it's earlier.
But I want them to verbalize why they are doing almost everything. Otherwise, it becomes a very superficial game.
If you always have somebody standing there saying, don't do that, do this, not like that, now we're going to, isn't this one wonderful? Let's all make it just like this. The kids don't really have to put themselves into it, and they don't have to worry about it.
Look, this is falling to the bottom. Do you think it's too heavy down here or too light?
Too heavy.
Too heavy. So how can we make it a little bit lighter?
Getting kids to work hard themselves is producing remarkable results in a program we found in Georgia. These 7th graders had been held back 2 years, called stupid.
Okay, that looks good.
I think they're behind because somewhere along the line, teachers gave up on them that they could learn the quote-unquote good stuff. They could be taught the good stuff, or that they would want to learn the good stuff.
Now they're allowed to do 3 years' work in one by completing 270 carefully designed assignments in the course of a year, so they can rejoin their original classmates. They have to work hard, but almost all of them do. They discover they can be good students.
When I do something, I try to make the best grade I can. I go for an 8 every time I do something.
The exciting programs are exploiting the fact that everyone can learn, even in math. Math? That mental torture that only a few can be good at? Math, it turns out, is not a special talent. Virtually all kids are natural mathematicians. They're always counting up things, comparing the shapes and sizes of their belongings, ordering their world. And they find it fun when it isn't spoiled for them.
What we're learning is that children are capable of inventing a great deal of mathematical knowledge on their own with the help of good situations, good interactions.
To encourage original thinking, teacher Maisie Jenkins, whose class we found in Wisconsin, uses a method developed at the nearby university in Madison. For a problem like finding the total number of kids from all classes in their school, she does not use the old method which allowed only one way to solve it. First go down the ones column, carry, then go down the tens column. She tells them, add it up any way you want. They each get the one right answer, and they all stay fascinated for more than an hour hearing how each of their classmates wrestled with the same problem.
What I did is I took all my numbers and I grouped them.
Anyone solve it a different way?
You stick the 10 and the 18 onto the 20, and that's 30, and there's 8 more left, that's 38.
Okay.
If you rounded it up to the nearest 10, it would be 20.
It's the opposite of traditional classes where you could lose points for doing it the wrong way.
Is this way better than this way?
No.
Too many schools have been narrowing students' thinking that way for years. They've been treating them like rigid calculating machines or containers meant to be filled up with knowledge, instead of the spirited thinkers they all are. In fact, the schools we all think are normal were actually designed for the machine age. It was industrialists and managers who quite literally laid out the basic school plans and schedules. These so-called factory model schools even look a bit like factories. After all, the factories needed rows of patient workers who would simply follow orders. So it's not surprising that in schools we got rows of students in desks following a centralized curriculum to teach what they'd need to know at work. And many were expected to drop out of school at some point, get blue-collar jobs, and earn an adequate living. Many of those jobs are now done by computers and robots. Now, in the information age, the human beings that industry needs are those who are able to do their own thinking, get actively involved, work in teams, be innovative, not merely industrious. The problem is, the factory model school, which does not encourage those qualities, is still with us and needs to be replaced with a new kind of schooling that does.
One's changing direction, and now we have both, right?
What will that new schooling be? We have found glimpses of what most schools should be like within a few years. There are changes in store for students, teachers, and the whole community. And it's not what most adults would recognize from their own schooling. Remember cheating? Don't get anyone else's answers or tell them you're thinking. Do your own work. In the most exciting schools we've found, that's now called cooperative learning.
This would be 1/3. Yeah.
And it works when kids put their heads together, learn by teaching each other, learn to take good advantage of each other's thinking.
Kids in cooperative learning get more of a feeling of
I know how to get information. I know how to learn. I know how to solve these problems. I can do it with my buddies. I can do it myself, rather than that I'm totally dependent on what the teacher does.
Well, it's frustrating. Some people forgot the negative sign in the quadratic formula.
Remember the teacher doing most of the talking, most of the work? You mostly just listen? Not anymore in the successful schools.
Ready? Shake it.
The children are doing the work.
Listen to it fast.
And I'm going around and supervising to see that they're on the track. And if you can see, everybody's working in this room. They're all discussing and learning with each other, and I'm learning too. We're all learning together.
This is not unruliness. It is active learning, one of the best kinds.
It would seem noisier than most teachers might be comfortable with, but if you listen to the kind of noise going on, it's a very constructive, solid, kind of happy noise, and it's kids getting involved, it's kids cooperating, kids sharing.
The students wind up working harder, and they like it.
What's really going to take roots in a child's mind is what they do and what they talk about and what they experience.
Teachers love this new method. They tell us working this way is a much more efficient use of their time. They can really make sure they're teaching each student.
What do you think you could do to solve your own problem here?
That one stuck.
The role of the teacher is changing. The teacher is becoming a broker of information, a mentor to students, a researcher, researching information, collaborating with others.
It's also the right style of teaching for using the miraculous new assistant teachers, which are beginning to revolutionize learning of all kinds. The computers and all their connections. They can multiply the time teachers have with each student. They have infinite accuracy and patience. They can be adapted to each person's different style of learning and handicaps, whatever the age.
Okay, you guys, go on, turn around, please.
But the great flesh and blood teachers are more critical than ever, especially for the millions of kids in America's underfunded schools. Schools which are unable for many reasons to benefit yet from the new revolution in learning, where kids are stressed and alienated, where violence and guns come even into school hallways,
You have a pass, young lady?
which police have to patrol as if they were streets,
Where's your ID card?
and where kids have inner problems like hunger and constant worries from their unstable lives. Amidst all of the negatives of these places, one person can still be their champion.
Yes. We have played just about every game imaginable, right?
A great teacher is the one who believes all children will learn. You must believe it. Not say it, but believe all children will learn.
For these kids, great teachers with the right stuff, like Magnolia Tabb in St. Louis or Robert Mitchell in Chicago, are often their only real hope to learn how they may win a better life.
When I came to this class, I ain't know nothing. In 2 weeks, he taught me how to do my timetables and stuff.
You motivate the class. It's a daily process, motivation. Day after day, week after week, month after month. And it should be year after year. Okay, that word is ordinary.
Ordinary.
Okay, very good. Okay, Vincent?
In the end, there's no mystery about it. What it comes down to again and again is the extraordinary power an adult can have when he or she pays careful attention to someone younger.
Them all day.
Listener. She does all of her work to the best of her ability. You are a pleasure to teach, says Miss Dolan to Marita Turla.
We've never been in a great school that didn't also have a great principal, a visionary who inspired freedom and experimentation in place of rigid bureaucratic procedure.
Well, the principal has to create a climate that is that upholds people's individuality and respecting creativity of teachers.
School reform starts with vision, and that's established by a great leader. Teachers acting independently can't do it. So a leader creates the climate in which energy and creativity is pursued.
Let's give Stephanie a nice hand. This is Spirit Day today.
In your groups, if you will kind of compare notes and see if
there's any other questions that you need to have cleared up.
In every region of America, even in some of the worst slums and most complacent suburbs, we have seen people set free by teachers and schools that act with a new understanding of how much all people are capable of.
So, Bill, to carry that thought just one step further, doesn't it only make sense that if you can measure success where an individual teacher is involved, and a greater measure of success when a whole school, or better still, an entire community becomes engaged, isn't it then possible for a whole nation to embrace these learning concepts? It just might be, if that nation first admits it has been fooling itself up to now. When we come back. We have found some entire communities where learning has become a common miracle. That is to say, everyone participates. But they've only been successful when they first overcame a common delusion. The delusion is that you can measure success by finding out merely whether you are doing better or worse than other people are, rather than by measuring everybody against some recognized standard of what a student needs to know. Now, this business of fooling ourselves has taken some ridiculous forms. One report showed that every one of the 50 states has been claiming to its citizens that its schools were performing above the national average, which is, of course, impossible. Not everyone can be in the top half. It may have made people feel good, but it has been just one of the many ways people have been able to ignore how important a whole new approach to learning is. Right, Bill?
Peter, I have found myself getting angriest in my travels around the country whenever I've come across schools that seem to be spending all their energy sorting and labeling students according to what they consider to be smarter or dumber, rather than focusing all their efforts on trying to discover and create better ways to engage every different student and teach each student as much as they can.
The A through F letter grades that most teachers give usually only compare students to others in the same class, without telling you what a student has actually learned, which may not be that much. What students badly need instead are well-described standards of knowledge and skills they may try for. Learning can then become a personal quest. Either they master it or they don't. Each student can look at the standard and say, I bet I can do that. The most exciting education communities we've come across, like Jefferson County, Colorado, are searching for better ways to judge a student's performance.
We want to change what happens to kids, and we want to do it by changing our thinking.
Now, you question, and it's okay.
How do we have performance assessments?
We're focusing on what kids are going to need in order to be successful.
Influencing and impacting the lives of kids with a new model.
In meetings all over the county, school administrators, parents, teachers, taxpayers are asking a question most communities overlook. What kind of people must their schools produce?
So we have a pretty good range.
They're coming up with goals like people who have learned how to learn, can communicate well with anyone, can concentrate when they need to, can get whatever information they need, people who feel deeply and act wisely. The vibrant learning communities we have found want not only to decide these goals for themselves, they also want to decide for themselves how to achieve them.
People are arguing, they're in conflict, they're having discussion about how education should be delivered differently.
How do we get through this?
This is the sound of successful school reform. Learning is going on. New connections are being made. You can almost hear the dendrites growing, as the brain scientists might say. Building new links between the different cells in communities seems to make the schools come alive again. Links between schools, parent groups, businesses, counselors, career planners, the police, the ethnic and neighborhood organizations, government, museums, service clubs, theaters, colleges. And the most vital of all these links is parents. In education, parents are gold. All the research, and there's lots of it, shows that whenever parents get involved in schooling in any way, even if they have little or no education themselves, the whole atmosphere improves, so learning is easier.
When parents who already have a tie and a bond to their children are involved with school people, that makes and seals the bond between school people and the children.
Yale child psychiatrist James Comer placed this bond between parent and school at the heart of a plan which is now rejuvenating urban schools in many parts of the country. like this one in Landover, Maryland, where parents literally help run the school.
What are your thoughts about this new direction with a specific focus on black male achievement? What are your thoughts about it?
Black role models in the school system been long needed.
I have been involved. His grades have gone up. He has made Student of the Month. He goes, Mom, are you going to be there for the book fair? Mom, are you going on the trip? Yes, I am.
Most of the best schools we found had discovered parent power, including that accelerated school we told you about in San Francisco.
Tells the child that my parent is very interested in my learning and the school is working with my parents, and therefore when all these people are working together, I'm important and my education is important, and therefore I have to do well.
Come on, Carla, looks good.
In these schools, behavior problems go down. Test scores shoot up. School becomes a real learning community. And often so does the home. When learning becomes a family project, we've seen parents like Chloe Gentry inspired to start learning again. We've watched some parents finally be motivated to get their high school equivalency degree, and seen family cycles of failure, cycles of illiteracy and a distrust of school often passed down through generations, broken by success.
Chloe Gentry, GED certificate.
But the most immediate results we've seen from building community connections are the new apprenticeships, in which businesses and schools have begun working together.
See, this route is on this waybill also.
Tony Perez was bored, frustrated, about to drop out of high school, until he got an apprenticeship with a New York City brokerage firm.
These guys are professional stockbrokers. Are you telling us that they're also good teachers?
Yes, they are excellent teachers. I learned more here than I would in a traditional economics class, and it's just great. I love it here.
It's like the light comes into your eye.
Apprenticeships work miracles, especially for that entire half of America's students not going to college, and for whom there are few programs to help them find their way. Principals report there is a sudden change in lost or troubled kids when adults ask them to join in and help run the world.
When you take them out of their adolescent peer group and put them with an adult peer group, there is terrific transformation in them. And that's when you begin to get them to focus on the next stage of their life, on goal setting, on what skills they still need, and of course improves their self-esteem and self-image.
We've found that once businesses start pitching in to help, they come up with about as many ways to do so as there are businesses. In Chicago, a group of business leaders are funding and running a new public school as a model to see if their expertise might help manage public schools as efficiently as they run their companies. Near Detroit, we found the auto union and management collaborating to put literacy and English classes right on the shop floor. That way, employees don't have to become adult dropouts, but can rediscover learning and be able to handle the constant retraining the new information age requires. In Boston, we found the Polaroid Corporation paying math and science teachers to spend a year in the company's state-of-the-art labs.
I hope I can transmit some of what makes me feel enthusiasm about science to Janet so that she can transmit it to her students.
But perhaps the most surprising gift we've seen entire communities give to their schools is values. They're teaching values again in public schools. Whose values? That, it turns out, is not a problem if all the religious and ethnic and other groups in a community are first brought together to see if there are any values they all happen to agree should be taught. There always are, many.
What happens is that everybody comes up with almost the same ones: honesty,
integrity, consideration, courage and conviction,
tolerance, justice, reliability.
The fundamental features of what have been and always will be an honorable life, a responsible life, have not really changed.
And we're teaching those social things that every upright citizen would want their child to have, to be, to know.
Educators report that in public schools now teaching values, like this one in Baltimore, kids discover they can tell for themselves what's right and wrong.
If I can say no to sex and drugs, then in that case, I can say no to stealing.
So they're more sure of themselves, which makes it easier for them to concentrate on studies. And all because the adults of their community agreed on some things, in spite of inevitable differences. In fact, recognizing our differences and taking advantage of them produced one of the most uniquely American developments we've come across. A development that accomplishes both integration and good education. In a few places like Lowell and Cambridge, Massachusetts, and East Harlem, New York, parents are required to choose which school they'll send each child to. Every school has developed its own theme. One emphasizes the arts, another science and math, another social institutions with its own student-run society.
How much? 81.
Another is a more traditional neighborhood school. All teach the basics.
And 6 from 8.
One of the beauties of these well-run choice systems is that while each school is required to maintain racial balance, the parents stop worrying about race as they begin concentrating instead on choosing the right style of learning for the unique combination of intelligences in each of their children. Integration becomes much easier, almost natural.
The schools must be integrated, and this is as good a system as any that I've seen to accomplish that goal.
Another beauty in having parents and kids choose their school is simply that they are then where they want to be. So the kids are happier, so they learn better, and that makes them happier still. This pursuit of happiness is basically what good learning is about.
So you need to be thinking, what would be logical?
The right to pursue happiness, to try to learn how to have a full and productive life, is part of the Declaration of Independence, part of what allows America's many different people to learn freely, and when they want to learn together. And it is mostly where different kinds of people have decided to use their diversity of intelligences and ideas and traditions that we have discovered all these isolated success stories. They prove how exciting America's new learning can be. If they can produce these common miracles, then why can't a whole nation?
Bill, thanks to a lot of the reporting that you've done, one of the most important changes we've discovered in the 4 years of reporting on education on the American agenda is that the American school system need no longer be what someone once called the graveyard of innovative ideas. It seems that vastly more people now understand that the way most of us do it is not preparing our kids very well for the next century. Even those parents who think they do it okay in my kid's school seem more prepared to acknowledge that a revolution in learning is essential. And Bill, it is true, isn't it, that there are some common denominators?
There are. We found in almost every case that first a group or community had somehow come together and asked, what do we want? Then they went to the trouble of searching far and near for ideas, which they combined and adapted to whatever they wanted to accomplish. They also had the courage, we found, to turn their new insights about learning into policy, to risk trying them, deciding what was worth spending money on, and then staying with it till it worked. And that, of course, Peter, is a real test. In other words, the successful people we found were not only looking for the answer, but looking to create the answer. They never merely copied what somebody else had done, but inevitably had worked out their own variation, somehow made the solution their own, which the best teachers have always taught us is what children naturally do when really learning something. They make it theirs.
So how do we conclude all this? I guess we do it by stating the obvious. Education is how a society hands out its life chances, how it gives people options. Philosophers sometimes say the best definition of freedom is a good range of options. So if this new revolution in learning that we have been talking about in this last hour is welcomed and done well, it will give many more Americans real freedom. Thanks for joining us.
Common Miracles, the result of 4 years of reporting from all over the United States for the American Agenda segment of World News Tonight. a videocassette version of Common Miracles, The New American Revolution in Learning, use your Visa or MasterCard and call 1-800-ABC-7500. The cost is $19.98 plus $3.95 shipping and handling. For a transcript, send $7 to Journal Graphics, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203, or call 303-831-9000.
This has been a special presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.